Hey guys, this is Camfrey15 back at it with another video for you guys, and I'm back with another Fairy Tail arc review video, which technically isn't a Fairy Tail arc review video. It's technically a Fairy Tail movie review. Yes. Obviously, after talking about the Avatar arc, we are now talking about well, I would say technically next in what if you would say, I guess in terms of the storyline where I would fit this is obviously Fairy Tail Dragon Cry, the movie. Now, just like Phoenix Priestess, I don't think any of the movies are canon to the main story. But if you like I did with Phoenix Priestess, where you would probably put Phoenix Priestess in the movie, it was in the canonical timeline. You'd put it after the Grand Magic Games arc, just slightly probably before the Tartaros arc slash Eclipse Celestial Spirits arc. Now for Dragon Cry, obviously canonically, this movie would essentially take place between the Avatar arc and the Alvarez Empire, with the post-credit scene essentially just fully into the Alvarez Empire arc, because at that point in time, Natsu and the gang had already traveled to Alvarez and came back, and that's when Zeref and Alvarez forces were doing the whole box-in strategy to obviously box in Fairy Tail, which we'll save for the Alvarez Empire arc review. But we're going to talk about the Dragon Cry movie and stuff like that, which in my rewatch, honestly, I can't lie. I think I like Dragon Cry more than Phoenix Priestess. Not to say that Phoenix Priestess was bad. I think I like Dragon Cry a lot more as a movie than Phoenix Priestess. Mostly because I feel like for this, in Phoenix Priestess, the animation kind of makes it look like it was a TV animation with just bigger budget. While in Phoenix Priestess, the animation it gave off actually felt like, okay, this is a big budget movie. Now, the one thing I do not kind of somewhat like about the animation, if you watch this movie, is the fact that they really do focus, well, I want to say focus on the nose, but they have like a tint on this red tint on the characters' noses, which is very visible. And I'm going to be honest, I don't like it. It makes the characters look like very freaking weird. Like there's a reddish tint on their nose for each of the characters in the series. Like it looks really weird, but yeah. But anyways, this movie actually came out to theaters in Japan May 6, 2017, and it came out in the States August 16, 2017. So let's get into the movie points and go on. Now we see the movie starts off with Kid Natsu walking in a cave, essentially finding Igneo, I'm guessing for the first time, and essentially, it cuts over after some time has passed, after Igneo is gone. Essentially, we see like how Makarov eventually found Natsu and took him into Fairy Tail, which I think was pretty nice background information. I think we've seen it in the original series, but to see it in the movie is pretty cool to see how Makarov came across Natsu and found him and say, hey, why don't you join Fairy Tail and everything? Now, we cut to present day, and Natsu is in this cell where we see this gigantic bird just carrying him. Now, he ends up getting out, and him and the bird essentially start fighting and stuff like that. But after they get onto the bridge, Natsu is about to unleash some sort of attack on this bird charging, and then that's when we cut over further in the past a few days ago before this whole incident. Now, we find out a few days ago, this man started an attack on the kingdom of Fiore, and we found out this guy's name is Zash Kane. Now, he defeats this group called the White Tigers, and he's with this girl named Princess Sonia. Now, we find out later in the film, Zash Kane used to be in the kingdom of Fiore, which I'll get into in a second. So, essentially, we cover to what Fairy Tail is doing, and we find out that Fairy Tail actually got a request from King Fiore. And essentially, he informs them, that in the Dragon Graveyard, that same Dragon Graveyard we saw in the Grand Magic Games arc, essentially there was a magical staff called the Dragon Cry. And essentially the reasoning why this is a whole problem is the fact that the Dragon Cry is a weapon, a staff that can essentially destroy a whole continent at will. Now, essentially, King Fiore goes on to say that it was taken by a former minister of staff in Fiore, Zash Kane. Now, he ends up working for the Kingdom of Stella. Now, the whole thing is, at first he tried to overthrow the king's rule, but he couldn't. So essentially, when he was in Fiore, he tried to overthrow the kingdom of Fiore and try to rule it, I guess, on his own because he didn't see eye to eye with everything. Then essentially, what happens is he was given a position in the kingdom of Stella, and he actually killed his own men in his own force and everything, which is freaking crazy and stuff like that. Now, Zash is also involved. We find out too, Zash is also involved in like dark arts or dark magic and stuff like that. And essentially, the request that Hisui and her father tell Natsu and the gang is to go retrieve the Dragon Cry in the Kingdom of Stella and bring it back before utter annihilation on the continent of Fiore is unleashed because he wants to get his revenge in the for the Kingdom of Fiore after, I guess, what they did to him. Now we see that Stella is essentially a country off the coast of the southeastern part of Ishgard, and it's its own separate island. Now, in terms of world building areas, there's not a much world building in terms of Fairy Tail. Like if you go to the Fairy Tail map, you clearly have the whole continent of Ishgard. In reality, the Kingdom of Stella is an actual like legit, country in the Fairy Tail world. Now, for the movie, they kind of go off it canonically where it's located at. Now, I made sure to put this note down. Now, if you go on the Fairy Tail full map of Ishgard, in reality, the Kingdom of Stella is in the eastern part of Bosco and Iceberg, which is in kind of the middle part of Ishgard over there. It's not a country off the coast. For this movie, they said, oh, it's just a country off the coast. It's not that. Now, don't ask me why they just didn't keep it to why in its designated location where it's at, like on the map. I don't know why they didn't do that, where they just say, hey, let's just put it off the coast, like it's some little island off the coast of Ishgard and stuff like that. Don't know why they didn't do that. Maybe it's just for reasons. Again, like I said, this movie's non-canon. So yeah, but it's up to you where you want to interpret the movies. Personally, I think the movies fit in really well in terms of the canon, and stuff like that. So yeah. Now, essentially, the Fairy Tail gang, they end up going to Stella, Kingdom of Stella, and it's a nice, really nice looking, very city and everything, very beautiful. Like they have these crystals that just gleam and stuff like that. Now, they end up in order to retrieve the Dragon Cry, they go to this bar that Zash Kane actually runs, so they can steal the staff. So the thing is, it's kind of, and it's funny, I don't know if the movie, I'm trying to think of the movie. I believe it was not Fairy Tail, One Piece film Z. And I don't know when that film came out compared to this film, but I think One Piece film Z came out first before Fairy Tail Dragon Cry. And if you watch the bar scene in One Piece film Z compared to the Fairy Tail Dragon Cry scene, you can very much see similarities in this scene. AKA, there was in One Piece film Z, you have it to where Robin's dressed up as well. I guess you can say like an Indian type of dancer that is kind of shows off the cleavage and everything and is just looking very advertising and sexy. And I'm guessing they got it from that film because Lucy is the person here. And also you have it to where Nami in film Z, was a waitress. Same thing for Urza, wearing a bunny, essentially like a bunny suit waitress outfit. And like I said, you have Robin in that movie wearing a sexy like Indian outfit where she's doing it like a dance and everything. And here you have Lucy doing the same thing. So I think you can, the similarities are there in those respective films. I think they got it from that. I think they got this bar scene from film Z. Not to say that I don't enjoy both scenes. I love Robin seeing all that cleavage, and I love Lucy seeing all that cleavage too. Now she kind of does seduce Zash Kane and everything. Now what she ends up doing is she uses Gemini to steal the keys of Zash Kane, or distracts him enough where Urza takes the keys and everything. So essentially what happens is they give the keys to Natsu and Wendy. Natsu and Wendy sneak into the whole area that they're at. Now we also find out that Gajeel and other members, I think it's Gajeel, Juvia, Levy, and Kana. It's been a while since I've seen the movie. They all go into the Kingdom of Stella to find out what's going on there as well. Now, essentially what happens is Wendy and Natsu break into this stash, and they end up grabbing, Natsu ends up grabbing the stash, or the staff of the Dragon Cry. But it has an effect on Natsu, and all of a sudden Natsu ends up Wendy sees him, and Natsu just tears up and is like, what the hell? And stuff like that. Now, this is when we see an alarm set off, and then Fairy Tail starts to run off with the staff. And you get this nice scene where they just all pass it to one another and stuff like that as they're trying to get out of the Kingdom of Stella. Now, what happens is Lucy ends up getting the staff, but runs into Zash Kane. But then that's when we have Natsu essentially come in to fight Zash Kane and protect him. But in this whole thing, we find out that Zash Kane, essentially, he can use his magic to control people and stuff like that. So, yeah. Now, they end up eventually escaping, and they get out of there. Now, the King of Stella, which is King Animus, isn't happy with Zash that he just let the Dragon Cry be stolen and everything, and he tells Zash, "Get my freaking Dragon Cry back to me right now." Essentially, King Animus for this movie is, well, we later find out who Animus really is, and it's kind of a plot twist, but we'll get to there later. But we see him as kind of a, like, honest to God, like the king from Phoenix Priestess, where he's just a self-centered prick, to be honest. So, yeah. Anyways, what happens is Natsu and the others are just kind of talking, and they're kind of just going to do the whole routine. We're going to just sleep here for the night, and then we're going to get out of here. But they end up getting attacked by Zash and the 3-star dolls, or the 3 stars, Doll, Capri, and Swan. And stuff like that. And they end up all getting attacked by them. Now, the thing is, Sonya, the princess, the girl, Sonya, which Zash was with at the start of the movie, essentially says to spare their lives and everything. And essentially, the fact that they're going to be taken to prison. Now, essentially, Zash, looks at Lucy, and, he does kind of the perverted thing by like, oh, this girl, and you're kind of led to believe that, well, I'm like, oh, he's gonna do some inappropriate things, like close to, if you watch Sword Art Online, what Sugo tried to do to Asuna potentially. So Zash takes Lucy with her. Now, essentially what happens is King Animus asks Sonya to go get the staff so he can perform the ritual, and stuff like that. Now, that's when we find out the whole scene with Natsu, where he was at. That's currently what led up. So everything we saw in the path, everything I said later, that's where Natsu ended up. And that's when Natsu remembers, like, I had to go save Lucy, and stuff like that. And he finds out that, he remembers that, Lucy was taken by Zash. Now, cutting over to Lucy, we kind of see that Lucy's in this cell when we see these other girls, and you're like, don't tell me this guy freaking just had all these girls and he's making them like prostitutes or something like that. But we see that Zash puts Lucy under his control, and now we're thinking it's like, I'm guessing, some forceful BDM type of shit going on where he essentially controls the girls. And we're thinking, because hey, it's Fairy Tail with how much fan service they show, we're thinking, oh, this is gonna go into the scene where he tries to do it with what, and forcibly do it with Lucy. And Lucy has no control of what she can do because she can't move her body. She just listens to the commands to what he says because she's under the control of Zash. And it's like, we're going to get a similar scene where Asuna almost got a, if you've seen that scene in the back half of season 1 of Sword Art Online. But it doesn't go like that. They actually kind of put a twist on it. And it's not a type of fan service scene where it could potentially go too far. We find out that since Zash Kane is involved in using dark arts types of magic, he has to do blood sacrifices. And essentially, he forces the girls to kind of just let themselves be cut so he can obviously have this magic and everything and stuff like that, which is kind of still like messed up because it's just girls forcibly cutting themselves and stuff like that. Now, Sonya comes in and kind of interrupts this whole process and asks Zash for the staff. But in the meantime, Natsu shows up and saves Lucy. Now, Zash then tries to, like, you know what, screw all this. I'm going to kill all of you. He tries to use the staff, but we see Wendy coming out of nowhere, protect everyone. And essentially, we have Sonya retreating, helping everybody retreat and get out of there. Now, the thing is, we find out that the reason why the 3 stars and Zash King were able to find Fairy Tail in the first place was the fact that Sonya actually has a magic that lets her see somebody's body heat, which essentially is like night vision, or not night vision, thermal vision, which is kind of like, it's kind of honest to God OP. So yeah. Now, Sonya goes on to tell the Fairy Tail members, like, you know, Animus at one point in time was a very good guy, but because of the stellanium, which is the crystals in the Kingdom of Stella, they're essentially like crying out, and what they do is they absorb the starlight, and essentially what when it does that, it's absorbing the magic power, and because that essentially all the stellanium is overflowing, essentially those crystals explode, and they're essentially like on the scales of, like, I think they like essentially an atomic bomb. So it would essentially destroy the crystal. So the reason why the Kingdom of Stella took the Dragon Cry was to essentially, you know, use the Dragon Cry to absorb the light, absorb the, obviously, the starlight, and be able to have that, make sure their kingdom prospers. And we also find out early on in the movie that they're, you know, stellanium crystals, they're like of like rare degree, like they're like, you can sell this and make a lot of money and stuff like that. And that's kind of, you know, how the Kingdom of Stella prospers and everything. And that's where, and you just have Sonya be like, please listen, I know we stole something very valuable for your country, but we need this to do it for our country. That's when we say Natsu says, listen, as much as, you know, I can understand where you're coming from, I can't have that happen because you stole something from our country, and that's nothing. And Sonya's kind of like, you're telling me you would just have a lot of innocent people die for no reason? And Natsu's like, listen, I ain't saying that. I'll go, how about this? I'll go take our staff back to our country, and guess what? I'll destroy the crystals, the stellanium crystals for you guys. I think that's a better option and stuff like that. And you can just wonder, it's like, yeah, why don't the people of Stella just destroy their own crystals? But then again, you just remember, like, no, that's their one source of income for their country that makes their country, like, very prosperous with funds and everything, and how wealthy the country is. So, yeah, also, Natsu makes the fact that, you know, he says the dragons inside the Dragon Cry, you know, they're enraged and they're mad that this is happening and everything and stuff like that. Now, the whole thing is Sonya doesn't end up believing Natsu that he'll destroy the crystals, and she kind of just runs off. Now, we see how Animus is kind of pissed off at Zash for using the Dragon Cry and almost attacking Sonya at this whole thing. Now, this is when Zash kind of goes up on his own. He's like, well, you know what? I'm not only going to take out Fairy Tail, I'm going to take out King Animus as well, and stuff like that. Now, we cut over and we see that Lucy is a little sad about, you know, what could happen to Stella, or the Kingdom of Stella, with all, obviously, everything that could happen and everything. And we get this nice Nalu moment to where Natsu finds her and talks with her, and they show her the night sky, and you know, we also find out early in the film that Stella's known for their nice stuff, their night skies. It's a nice Nalu moment. It's a nice romantic Nalu moment we see in the film. There's a Nalu moment that kind of ends off the film as well, just like in Phoenix Priestess. But hey, we love them Nalu moments, right? And stuff like that. So yeah, now this is when the Fairy Tail plans to get the Dragon Cry back. So essentially what they're doing is they infiltrate the Kingdom of Stella. And we find out that Urza ends up fighting Swan again, and she ends up getting her rematch. How she fights is using like guard type of magic, where she's using stellanium type of, you know, armor and stuff like that. Gray actually runs into Juvia, and they start their fight with Doll, who, you know, that whole thing. Wendy and Carla fight Gapri, and we see Lucy end up freeing the other girls from the prison that were trapped, and Zash ends up seeing this, and she ends up fighting Zash. Now, essentially what happens is the fights go their own ways. we see Wendy using her Dragon Force along with Carla's transformation magic, and it's pretty cool and everything. We have it to where, Lucy against Zash uses her Capricorn Stardust form, and when Zash is trying to use his controlling magic, it has no effect because Capricorn's type of magic cancels that whole ability out and everything and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool. Now, because of the Zash essentially escapes on his dog called Red Wolf, which looks like some sort of demon dog and stuff like that. Like I said, Wendy and Carla use their teamwork to beat Capri. Gray uses his Ice Demon Slaying magic to beat Doll, and Urza actually uses, which was a crazy type of thing, literally takes us from Jalal and uses a Grand Chariot spell to defeat Swan, and she does it from the waters. And I'm like, that's dope. So essentially, it's been a while since I've seen the entire Alvarez Empire, but seeing this like, oh, so she must have got this from her boyfriend, Jalal. Okay, she can use Grand Chariot. Now, I don't know if she can use Grand Chariot in the main canon, but just to see her do Grand Chariot, and she used this with her feet, mind you. It was pretty badass, to say the least, and stuff like that. So, yeah. Now, Natsu ends up getting to Sonya, and this is when you kind of find out the plot twist. We kind of find out that, Animus is really technically the alter ego of Sonya. Or Sonya, yeah. And we find out that, it was just Sonya seeing things and everything from mirrors and stuff like that. And essentially, we find out that Animus is actually a dragon soul that lives within Sonya. Honest to God, similar to like how Igneo and the other dragons lived within their dragon slayers to prevent them from turning into dragons. So it's, in a way, I guess you can kind of specify, it's like, Sonya's somewhat like a dragon slayer without using dragon slaying magic. She just contained Animus, but we'll get to that by the end of the movie and stuff like that. So yeah, now essentially what happens is the reason why Animus wants the dragon cry so bad is so, Animus could escape and Sonya's body and have a body to himself. I think Animus is a girl. I don't know, but that's the whole thing there. Animus wanted a body to itself. And it's like, I can't deal with being in a human body and stuff like that. Now, Sonya ends up getting back to her senses and tries to give Natsu the staff, but Zash comes in and says he's going to use the Dragon Cry to destroy all of Fiore and take them down. Now, Animus within Sonya ends up getting super pissed off and ends up leaving, I guess, the body of Sonya and transforms into, his true form or her true form. I think Animus is a girl. I think it's a dude. I don't know. Animus ends up transforming into, his true form and is a dragon, and is literally chasing Zash up the building and stuff like that. And it's crazy. And we also kind of see that, technically the stellium kind of comes from Animus because Animus looks like, your body looks like stellium and everything and stuff like that. Really cool stuff here and stuff like that. Now, Zash eventually has Animus go on a rampage and he controls him. That's also too, he also sets free his Quardam soldiers, which essentially are artificial dragon slayers. And in this movie, they're quote unquote 4th generation dragon slayers. So you got the first generation dragon slayers, which are the original dragon slayers, which are Natsu, Sting, and Rogue. Not Natsu, not those three. Natsu, Gajul, Wendy. You got the 2nd generation dragon slayers, Cobra and Loxus. 3rd generation, which are Sting and Rogue. 4th generation are these Quardam soldiers, and obviously if you read Fairy Tail 100-Year Quest, they have 5th generation dragon slayers, and stuff like that. So yeah. So that's the whole thing. Now we see Zash activate the Dragon Cry, and we see all these magic circles activate all over the continent of Fiore. The thing is, he can't control this power, and it ends up disintegrating him and kills him, essentially, because he can't manage the freaking power. Now, the thing is, eventually, Natsu and Animus actually have a fight. So you kind of get something back from the past, like the Grand Magic Games are, when you had, obviously, the Dragon Slayers fighting against the dragons. This time, it's Natsu against Animus the Dragon and stuff like that. And it's a pretty cool freaking battle. Like, they're literally running on buildings and stuff like that. And Natsu's like, I'm going to defeat you to get that Dragon Cry and everything. But what happens is Natsu ends up getting impaled by Animus And Animus actually eats the dragon cry to gain more power and get stronger and everything. Now Sonya tries to calm Animus down, and obviously Animus isn't listening one bit to Sonya at all. And kind of in the whole thing here, you get a very badass scene, and they play that one music where it's, they play in the early stage of the Fairy Tail anime, where it's just that, like, okay, it's about to turn up, and everything, and stuff like that. And essentially, Natsu, like, listen, I fight for my friends and I fight to protect them. And I'm gonna defeat whoever's, in my way that threatens my friends and stuff like that. And everything. And he even tells Animus, look, I don't use my dragon slaying magic to kill dragons. I use my magic to protect my friends, which was a great speech by Natsu, which is essentially the Natsu character personified. He uses his magic, he uses his power to protect his friends and fight for them. And we see in this fight, he literally channels, his E&D form, which Animus is like, you're no dragon slayer, you're E&D. And Natsu's like, I don't care what I am. Now, mind you, this is Natsu at this point in time not knowing that he's E&D. And I forgot to mention, well, actually, I'll bring it up to the end of the scene. And you get this moment where he's half Natsu, half E&D. And it's like, yo, this is crazy, which definitely is obviously things that tie into the Alvarez Empire arc and everything. And it was an amazing fight with this whole half E&D, half Natsu whole thing. Because at this point in time, we know Natsu's whole body was the conflicting part of the fact that, well, is Natsu a human or a dragon or a demon inside, some sort of thing and stuff like that, which we'll get into the Alvarez Empire more about that and everything. And essentially, what happens is Natsu ends up defeating, Animus, and goes down, and kind of that's it. We see all the magic circles gone and everyone is saved. Now, when Lucy ends up fighting Natsu, the thing is, we see at the start, or like at some point in the movie, at the start of the movie, is the fact where, there was this question Natsu asked Lucy at the start of the movie where he's like, hey, Lucy, how do I look like? And Lucy's like, well, you look like the same old Natsu since we first met. And I forgot to mention that in that first scene when Natsu asked her that question, he gets up really close to Lucy, and Wendy shows up, and Wendy's like, hey guys, and she's like, oh my gosh, you guys are having a moment. And I'm like, Wendy Shipsit, yes. I know, I love it. I enjoyed when Wendy said, oh my gosh, you guys are having a moment. And Lucy's like, no, we're not. And stuff like that. But I love how in this scene, I really do love this Nalu moment here, is where Natsu, I guess you can say, kind of realizes he was some sort of creature, some sort of monster, and he asks Lucy the same question. And essentially he asked her, like, Lucy, how do I look to you? And Lucy, obviously going up to him, very emotional, because she thought she thought he was dead. And she's like, you're the same old Natsu I've known since we first met each other, which I thought was a very romantic, heartfelt scene. And I was like, oh, that's nice. And stuff like that. Now, Sonya actually talks to Animus as he's like dying. And essentially the thing is, Animus kind of reflects on his life, and Animus starts to cry over the mistakes he kind of made. And Sonya's like, well, I never got to see a dragon cry. Essentially, we find out that the dragon cry transforms into a ribbon, and it just floats away into the sky. Now, Sonya essentially tells Lucy that Animus is gone and that she's going to miss him because she would have loved to treat him like family. And we get another nice Nalu moment to where he wraps his arm around not only Happy, but Lucy, and very tightly makes Lucy come over to him, and he's like, well, he's like, everybody that I know within Fairy Tail is my family and stuff like that. And I really do like the whole fact that he's mostly kind of calling out to, mostly Happy and Lucy, the fact that they're really technically, even though Fairy Tail as a whole is his true family, he sees Happy and Lucy as his family as the two closest members that he considers family, which I thought was another great way to end a movie off, especially a great Nalu moment to end the movie off. Just wonderful stuff, wonderful stuff. Then you have during the movie's post credit scene, you have it to where the Acnologia comes across and grabs the ribbon, and he actually flashes back to the past when he remembers when he killed the dragons in the dragon graveyard. We don't see it, but we see that Acnologia was the person that killed Zirconis and the others in the dragon graveyard, which, hey, that was nice. It's a nice tie into the Grand Magic Games where you're like, oh, so Acnologia did that and everything. I think they said Acnologia did kill the dragons in the dragon graveyard, but it's nice to see, like, oh, it's coming full circle now. And stuff like that. We also see that Sonia was there in the graveyard, and we now find out, well, Sonia was damn near over 400 years old, and the reason why she was alive this entire time was thanks to Animus. Now, we see Animus back in the past was on the brink of death at that point in time, and essentially, he asked her, like, listen, let me go into her body, because he asked her, like, what's her first name? And that's obviously when Sonia's like, well, my first name's Sonia. Now, we cut over to Acnologia in the present, and essentially he's grabbing the ribbon. He's like, I don't fucking care about this shit. This is just a doll. This is just something else. And I think from what I remember, he disintegrates the ribbon. And we see in the background, we see Zareth and the Alvarez Empire from the west essentially starting to invade their side of Ishgard, to which essentially we know at this point in time, the start of the Alvarez Empire arc has essentially would have started by now. But this is kind of really the lead into the Alvarez Empire arc, and that's why I say essentially this fits in directly, for the Alvarez Empire arc, but cuts a little bit into it with the post-credit scene. I will say I do like the fact that they had that post-credit scene about the Alvarez Empire arc with that in the movie, because it's like, oh, so technically you could somewhat say this movie's canon, but it's not, but it is at the same time because of the post-credit scene. But yeah. But yes, that's Fairy Tail Dragon Cry. I definitely did. I think I like this movie more than Phoenix Priestess. Just from the standpoint, I feel like not to say that Phoenix Priestess didn't hit you hard, but I do like the fact that this movie, compared to Phoenix Priestess, it had tie-ins to previous arcs. Obviously, the Grand Magic Games arc with the Dragon Graveyard and the Dragon Cry, and then even the ties to the Alvarez Empire with the post-credit scenes and stuff like that. And I feel like the grand scheme of things for Fairy Tail, this movie had a more impact on the series as a whole. And it's a movie that's like, oh, you got to see literally up until really Avatar arc to understand what the hell this movie's about. And I honestly did like the movie. Other than the nose animation, it was fine. I thought the story, for what it was worth, was a pretty interesting, nice story, to say the least, as well. Honestly, I kind of think in some cases it's a better story than Phoenix Priestess. I feel like the animation was a lot better because it actually looked like a movie budget animation compared to Phoenix Priestess that looked like just a 1 hour filler episode of Fairy Tail. And stuff like that. So I definitely did like those moments. And yeah, but I definitely did enjoy Fairy Tail Dragon Cry. Very much enjoyed it. Now, if you're wondering where you can watch this movie, you can watch it either on DVD, or if you have the Funimation app subscription, you'll be able to watch this, whether it's subbed or dubbed. But other than that, that's it. And yeah. So next time on my Fairy Tail arc reviews, next Monday, I will finally be getting into the final arc of Fairy Tail, and that is the Alvarez Empire arc. Mind you, I've actually watched a little bit of the Alvarez Empire arc. I kind of taken a break of watching Fairy Tail for a bit. I have to get back into it. I'm at the part of the Alvarez Empire arc where Nasu's fighting Zara for the first time. But yes, our Fairy Tail arc reviews are coming to an end. We only have 2 more videos left. So next week on Monday, we will be doing the Alvarez Empire arc part 1 review, which is going to start from the start of the arc to, I forgot the part where I'm stopping at. I know where exactly I'm stopping at, or like what episode/chapter I'm stopping at, but I don't know where I'm leaving off at. But when I get to that movie, I'll say it then. And the week after that will be the final Fairy Tail arc review, where I will discuss the original series end. Yeah. Other than that, guys, I'm gonna get out of here, guys. Hopefully, you guys have a great rest of your day or night, or when you turn out this video. Again, put in the comment section your thoughts on Dragon Cry, the fairy tale movie. Do you like it more than Phoenix Priestess, or do you still take Phoenix Priestess over Dragon Cry? As well as hit that subscribe button to get more fairy tale content, whether it's the last 2 arc review videos or my Fairy Tail 100 Year Quest chapter reviews. So other than that, guys, I'm gonna get out of here. Hopefully, you guys have a great rest of your day or now channel this video. Until then, guys, stay safe. Peace.